Welcome to Story Tales. Before we dive into today's roller coaster of emotions, betrayal, and redemption, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more gripping stories that keep you hooked from start to finish. Now, let's get into it. The story begins in a picturesque suburban neighborhood in the fall of 2019. The leaves had just started to turn shades of amber and crimson, giving the streets a postcard-perfect look. For 34-year-old Evan Harper, this was supposed to be the happiest time of his life. A successful architect with a thriving career, he had just celebrated his 8th wedding anniversary with his wife, Leah. Leah was everything Evan thought he'd ever wanted. She was smart, witty, and had an artistic flair that balanced his more structured personality. They'd met a decade earlier at a gallery opening. Evan was there for work, and Leah was showcasing her photography. Sparks flew immediately, and they'd been inseparable ever since. The couple had settled into a life that looked perfect from the outside. They had a cozy 2-story home with a porch swing Leah adored and a golden retriever named Max who was practically their first child. To top it all off, Leah had recently started her own small business as a wedding photographer, a dream she'd been nurturing for years. It seemed like everything was falling into place. But, as you probably guessed, appearances can be deceiving. The first sign that something was amiss came in the form of Leah's newfound obsession with her phone. Evan couldn't help but notice how she'd started guarding it like a top-secret dossier. At first, he chalked it up to her business taking off. After all, she had been working with several new clients and was constantly responding to emails and texts. But over time, the behavior became harder to ignore. One night, Evan came home late after a grueling day at work. He found Leah sitting on the couch, her legs tucked under her as she scrolled through her phone. Max was sprawled out on the floor, snoring softly, and the TV hummed in the background. "Hey," Evan said, dropping his bag by the door. "What's got you so glued to that thing?" Leah looked up, startled, and quickly locked her phone. "Oh, just emails," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "One of my clients is being super indecisive about their wedding album." Evan nodded, though something about her tone felt off. But he didn't push. He trusted Leah, at least he thought he did. A few weeks later, Evan noticed another shift in Leah's behavior. She started dressing up more, even on days she wasn't meeting clients. Her laughter seemed forced, her kisses distracted. And then there were the late nights. Leah had always been a night owl, but now she was staying up hours after Evan had gone to bed, her phone glowing in the dark. One Friday evening, Evan decided to surprise her by bringing home her favorite takeout. He thought it might help them reconnect, but when he walked into the house, Leah wasn't there. Max greeted him enthusiastically, but the house was otherwise eerily silent. Evan checked his phone. No missed calls, no texts. It wasn't unusual for Leah to go out during the day for shoots, but she always let him know if she'd be late. His stomach churned as he tried to shake off the unease creeping over him. An hour later, Leah walked through the door, her face flushed and her hair slightly disheveled. "Hey, sorry I'm late," she said, setting her bag on the counter. "I lost track of time editing photos at the studio." Evan forced a smile. "No problem. I brought Thai." Her reaction was lukewarm at best. "Oh, thanks. I'm not super hungry, though. I grabbed a bite earlier." It was a small moment, but it added to the growing pile of doubts in Evan's mind. Over the next few days, Evan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Leah was becoming more distant, and Evan found himself second-guessing every interaction. Was he being paranoid, or was there something he wasn't seeing? One evening, while Leah was in the shower, Evan noticed her phone on the nightstand. It was unlocked, a rarity these days. His heart pounded as he debated whether to look. He had never invaded her privacy before, but something deep inside told him he wouldn't find peace unless he knew the truth. He picked up the phone and opened her messages. Most of them were harmless, texts from friends, reminders for upcoming shoots. But then he saw a name that made his stomach drop: Ryan W. The messages were brief, but they painted a clear picture. Ryan wasn't just a client. He was someone Leah had been spending a lot of time with. The texts were flirtatious, peppered with inside jokes and emojis that left little room for misinterpretation. One message stood out. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Last night was amazing. Winking face. Evan's chest tightened as the realization hit him like a freight train. Leah was cheating. He put the phone back down just as he heard the shower turn off. His hands were trembling, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to confront her immediately, but another part, the part that was still clinging to denial, told him to wait. He needed more proof, something concrete that couldn't be explained away. The following day, Evan called in sick to work. He waited until Leah left for her supposed client meeting and decided to follow her. His heart was pounding as he trailed her car through the city, every turn confirming his worst fears. Leah pulled into the parking lot of a trendy cafe. Not her studio, as she'd claimed. Moments later, a tall man with dark hair and a confident smile walked up to her car. Ryan. Evan watched as Leah got out, hugged him, and then kissed him on the cheek. They walked into the cafe together, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Evan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak swirling inside him, but he stayed put. He needed to think, to figure out what to do next. That evening, Leah came home as if nothing had happened. She kissed Evan on the cheek, asked about his day, and even offered to make dinner. Evan played along, his mind still reeling from what he'd seen. As Leah cooked, Evan stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the one he'd seen that afternoon. He wanted to yell, to demand answers, but he knew the confrontation would come soon enough. For now, he needed to gather his thoughts and his resolve. The days following Evan's discovery were some of the most challenging of his life. He couldn't look at Leah without seeing her betrayal, without hearing Ryan's name echoing in his mind. But instead of confronting her right away, Evan did what any meticulous architect might. He planned. He spent his evenings digging deeper, combing through Leah's social media and emails, trying to piece together the full extent of her affair. What he found was a painful confirmation of everything he feared. Ryan wasn't just a passing fling. Their relationship had been going on for months, right under Evan's nose. There were photos of them together at restaurants, texts filled with intimate jokes, and even plans for weekend getaways that Leah had disguised as work trips. Evan's hurt transformed into a quiet fury. He had been working overtime to support Leah's business dreams, skipping nights out with friends and sacrificing vacations to save money, all while she was sneaking around with another man. One evening, while Leah was out meeting a client, Evan confided in his best friend, Marcus. Over beers in Marcus's backyard, Evan spilled everything. The texts, the cafe encounter, and Leah's increasingly erratic behavior. Marcus listened intently, his jaw tightening as Evan recounted the details. "Man, I'm sorry," he said finally, "but you can't keep this bottled up. You've got to confront her." "I know," Evan admitted, staring at his beer. "But every time I think about it, I freeze. What if she denies it? Or worse, what if she doesn't? Then you'll know," Marcus said firmly, "and you can start figuring out what's next. But you can't live like this, Evan. You deserve better." Evan nodded, knowing his friend was right. He had spent weeks drowning in suspicion and heartbreak, and it was time to face the truth head-on. The turning point came on a Saturday morning. Leah had left early for what she claimed was a last-minute shoot, leaving Evan alone in the house. As he sat in the living room, his thoughts swirling, Max trotted over and rested his head on Evan's knee. The simple gesture brought a lump to Evan's throat. If only relationships were as straightforward as the loyalty of a dog. He grabbed his phone and scrolled through Leah's texts, landing on yet another message from Ryan. "Can't wait for tonight. I'll bring the wine." Winking face, Evan stared at the screen, his anger building. Tonight? She had told him they'd watch a movie together, maybe order pizza. The audacity was staggering. By the time Leah returned that afternoon, Evan had made up his mind. He wasn't going to wait for another lie, another excuse. He was done playing the fool. When Leah walked through the door, she was humming to herself, her mood far too cheerful for someone who had just spent the morning working. Evan was sitting on the couch, his arms crossed, his jaw set. "Hey," Leah said, setting her bag down. "What's up? You look serious." We need to talk, Evan said, his voice cold. Now. Leah froze, her smile faltering. Okay. What about? Evan gestured to the spot across from him. Sit down. She hesitated before sitting, her eyes darting nervously. Evan, you're scaring me. What's going on? I think you know, he said, pulling out his phone and scrolling to the incriminating texts. Who's Ryan? Leah's face went pale. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Leah, Evan snapped, his patience snapping. I saw the messages. I followed you to that cafe. I know you've been lying to me. For a moment, Leah didn't say anything. She looked down at her hands, her chest rising and falling as she tried to find the right words. Finally, she whispered, I'm so sorry. Evan's heart sank. He had hoped, foolishly, that she might deny it, that there was some other explanation. But hearing her admit it felt like a punch to the gut. How long? He asked, his voice trembling. Evan. How long, Leah? 6 months? She said quietly, tears spilling down her cheeks. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. Evan laughed bitterly. A mistake? Leah, a mistake is spilling coffee on your shirt. What you did was a choice. Over and over again. I wasn't thinking. No, he interrupted. You were thinking plenty. You were thinking about yourself. About Ryan. About anything but the life we built together. Leah's tears turned into full-blown sobs as she tried to defend herself. She talked about feeling neglected, about how Evan's long hours at work had left her feeling lonely. She claimed Ryan had been a distraction, someone who made her feel alive again, but Evan wasn't buying it. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for us? For you, he said, his voice rising. I've been working my ass off to give you the life you wanted. And this is how you repay me? I know I messed up, Leah cried. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. Please, Evan, don't throw everything away. Evan shook his head, his jaw tightening. You already did. The next few days were a blur of tension and silence. Leah begged Evan to give her another chance, but he couldn't bring himself to trust her. Every time he looked at her, he saw the lies, the betrayal, the nights she had spent with Ryan while he waited at home like a fool. One evening, Leah suggested a temporary separation. Maybe we just need some space, she said, her voice trembling, to figure out what we really want. Evan agreed, though not for the reason she thought. He wasn't looking for clarity. He already knew what he needed to do. The separation was his chance to start over, to rebuild his life without the weight of Leah's betrayal holding him back. As Leah packed her bags, Evan felt a mix of relief and sadness. He had loved her once, deeply, but that love had been shattered, and no amount of tears or apologies could put it back together. I'm sorry, Evan, Leah said again as she stood by the door. For everything. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Take care of yourself, Leah. And just like that, she was gone. But the story wasn't over yet. As Evan adjusted to life without Leah, he began to uncover even more secrets about her affair. Secrets that would push him to the edge and force him to confront not just Leah, but himself. Stay tuned, because things are about to get even more intense. And remember, if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to Story Tales for more. After Leah moved out, Evan thought he'd finally have some peace. But instead of relief, he was met with a gnawing emptiness. The house felt cavernous and silent, each room a painful reminder of the life they had shared, and the betrayal that had torn it apart. To cope, Evan threw himself into work. He spent long hours at the office, sketching out new designs and taking on additional projects to keep his mind occupied. His colleagues noticed the change. The usually easygoing and jovial Evan had become quiet and withdrawn, his focus razor-sharp but his demeanor distant. One day, during a late-night brainstorming session, his coworker and friend Clara approached him. Clara had been with the firm for years and was one of the few people Evan trusted implicitly. Hey, she said, sitting down across from him. You've been killing it at work lately? But, are you okay? Evan hesitated, unsure how much to share. Just going through some personal stuff, he said finally. His tone clipped. Clara studied him for a moment before nodding. Well, if you ever need to talk, I'm here. Just don't forget to take care of yourself. Okay? Her words stuck with him. Evan realized that while he was trying to rebuild his life, he had been avoiding the one thing he couldn't escape: his emotions. The turning point came when Evan decided to start therapy. At first, he was reluctant. He wasn't sure if talking to a stranger would help, but something inside him knew he needed to confront his feelings head-on. His therapist, Dr. Walsh, was a kind yet firm woman in her 50s who wasted no time cutting through Evan's defenses. "Let's talk about Leah," she said during their first session. "How are you processing what happened?" Evan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I'm angry, hurt, betrayed, but I also feel stupid, like I should have seen it coming." Dr. Walsh nodded thoughtfully. "It's natural to feel that way, but blaming yourself won't change what happened. What matters now is how you move forward." Over the next few weeks, Evan opened up about his marriage, his doubts, and his fears about the future. Therapy became a safe space for him to unpack the pain he had been carrying, and slowly, he began to find clarity. But just as Evan started to find his footing, life threw him another curveball. One evening, while sorting through some paperwork, Evan came across an envelope addressed to Leah. It had been shoved to the back of a drawer, forgotten amidst the chaos of her departure. Curiosity got the better of him, and he opened it. Inside was a bill from a luxury hotel, dated 3 months before the separation. The charges were for a weekend stay, complete with spa treatments and room service for 2. Evan's stomach churned as he realized the dates aligned perfectly with one of Leah's so-called work trips. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated betrayal, complete with romantic getaways funded by their joint bank account. Evan's hands shook as he stared at the bill. The anger he thought he had under control came roaring back, threatening to consume him. He needed answers, and he wasn't going to wait for Leah to give them to him. The next day, Evan contacted a private investigator. If Leah had been hiding this much, who knew what else she had kept from him? The investigator, a no-nonsense man named Carl, assured Evan he'd get to the bottom of it. 2 weeks later, Carl delivered his findings, and they were worse than Evan could have imagined. Not only had Leah been seeing Ryan for over a year, but she had also been funneling money from their joint account into her personal savings. Thousands of dollars had quietly disappeared, most of it spent on extravagant dinners, gifts, and trips with Ryan. "She's been planning her exit for a while," Carl said, handing over a thick file of evidence. "But it looks like she didn't expect you to catch on this soon." Evan felt sick. Leah hadn't just betrayed him emotionally. She had manipulated him financially, draining resources he had worked hard to build. Armed with this new information, Evan decided it was time to confront Leah one last time. He invited her to the house, under the guise of discussing the separation agreement. Leah arrived looking wary but composed. She sat on the couch, her posture stiff, as Evan placed the file in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, her voice tight. "Proof," Evan said, his tone cold. "Proof of everything you've been hiding from me." Leah paled as she flipped through the file. The hotel bills, the bank statements, the photos of her and Ryan, it was all there, laid bare. "Evan, I can explain." "No," he interrupted. "I'm done listening to your lies. This isn't just about the affair anymore. Leah, you stole from me. You used me." Tears welled in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." "Stop," Evan snapped. "Just stop. I don't want your apologies. I want you to take responsibility for what you've done." For the first time, Leah seemed truly speechless. She looked down at her hands, her facade of confidence crumbling. "I'll have my lawyer contact you," Evan said, standing. "We're done here." Leah left without another word, leaving Evan alone in the house that had once been their home. He felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow, knowing this chapter of his life was finally coming to an end. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional healing. Evan fought hard to reclaim what Leah had taken, and though the process was draining, it gave him a sense of closure. Through it all, Marcus and Clara remained by his side, reminding him that he wasn't alone. Therapy continued to be a lifeline, helping Evan process the pain and rebuild his sense of self. Slowly but surely, he began to feel like himself again. He started going out with friends, picking up old hobbies, and even adopted a new dog to keep Max company. Life wasn't perfect, but it was moving forward, and that was enough. But just when Evan thought he had put the past behind him, an unexpected message threatened to pull him back in. Stay tuned, because the final showdown is just around the corner. If you're hooked on this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Story Tales for more. For a few weeks after their final confrontation, Evan thought he was finally free of Leah. The house was quieter now, and though the memories lingered, the absence of her presence felt like a weight lifted off his chest. His legal team was making steady progress with the separation agreement, and Evan had begun to focus on himself, rediscovering the passions and routines he'd neglected during the chaos of his marriage. But as anyone who has been through a storm like this knows, the calm never lasts for long. One evening, Evan came home from work to find an envelope waiting on his doorstep. It was unmarked and slightly weathered, but as he opened it, his pulse quickened. Inside was a series of photos, grainy but unmistakable, of Leah and Ryan together. They were in various public places. A park, a cafe, even outside what looked like Ryan's apartment. Evan's stomach churned as he flipped through the images, wondering who could have sent them and why. At the bottom of the stack was a note, hastily scrawled in blue ink. "You deserve to know the truth. There's more to this than you think." Evan's mind raced. Who sent this? And what exactly were they trying to tell him? The photos didn't reveal anything he didn't already know, but the cryptic message hinted at something deeper. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about Leah's affair anymore. The next morning, Evan took the photos and note to Carl, the private investigator he had hired previously. Carl examined the evidence, his expression unreadable. "Looks like someone's trying to stir the pot," Carl said, leaning back in his chair. "The question is, are they trying to help you or hurt you?" "I don't know," Evan admitted. "But if there's more to this, I need to find out." Carl nodded. "I'll dig into it. In the meantime, keep an eye out for anything unusual. Whoever sent this might not be done." As Carl worked to uncover the truth, Evan's life took another unexpected turn. He received a call from Clara one afternoon, her voice tinged with concern. "Evan, you're not going to believe this," she said. "Leah showed up at the office today." Evan froze. "What? Why?" "She said she needed to talk to you. Something about wanting to make things right. But she looked desperate. I told her you weren't here, but I thought you should know." Evan sighed, a mix of frustration and exhaustion washing over him. "Thanks for letting me know. If she shows up again, call security." "Will do," Clara said. "Take care of yourself, okay?" That evening, Evan's phone buzzed with a text from Leah. "Evan, please, we need to talk. It's important." He stared at the message, his anger bubbling to the surface. She had already said everything she needed to say, and nothing she could add would change what she had done. But despite his better judgment, a part of him was curious. What was so urgent that she would go to these lengths? After a moment of hesitation, he replied, "Meet me at the coffee shop on 8th tomorrow at noon. 1 hour. That's all you get." When Evan walked into the cafe the next day, Leah was already there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea she hadn't touched. She looked different, paler, thinner, her usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy that made her fidget with the edge of her sleeve. "Evan," she said softly as he approached. "Thank you for meeting me." "Make it quick," he said, sitting across from her. "What do you want?" Leah hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if she were afraid someone might be listening. I made a mistake," she began, her voice trembling. "A huge mistake. And I don't just mean the affair." Evan raised an eyebrow, his skepticism evident. "Go on. There's something you don't know about Ryan," Leah said, lowering her voice. "Something I didn't know either at first. He's not who he says he is." Evan frowned. "What are you talking about?" Leah leaned in, her hands clasped tightly on the table. I found out he's married. Evan. He has a wife and kids. He told me he was separated, but it was a lie. And now he's threatening me. Evan's mind raced. This was a twist he hadn't seen coming. Threatening you how? He says if I don't keep quiet about everything, he'll ruin me. He knows people, powerful people. I don't even know if I'm safe anymore. Evan stared at her, trying to gauge whether this was another one of her manipulations, or if she was genuinely afraid. Either way, her problems with Ryan were no longer his concern. That's not my problem, Leah, he said finally. You chose to get involved with him. Now you're dealing with the consequences. Tears welled in Leah's eyes. I know I screwed up, Evan, but I'm scared. And I don't have anyone else to turn to. Evan shook his head, standing up. You should have thought about that before you lied to me. Good luck, Leah. You'll need it. As Evan left the cafe, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Ryan's story than Leah had let on. Her fear had seemed genuine, but was it enough to warrant getting involved? He wasn't sure. That night, Carl called with an update. I dug into Ryan, he said. Your ex-wife was right, he's married. Lives in the suburbs, 2 kids, works in finance. But here's where it gets interesting. He's also under investigation for fraud. Apparently, he's been embezzling money from his company for years. Evan's grip on the phone tightened. Does Leah know? Doubt it, Carl said. But if she's mixed up with him, she could be in deeper trouble than she realizes. Evan sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Just when he thought he was done with Leah's drama, it seemed to pull him back in. The following days were a whirlwind. Leah continued to send messages, each one more desperate than the last. She begged Evan to help her, claiming she had no one else to turn to. Evan ignored most of them, determined to stay out of her mess. But then, late one night, his phone buzzed with a message that made his blood run cold. Evan, I think someone's following me. Please, I need your help. Evan stared at the screen, torn between his lingering anger and the nagging sense of duty that refused to let him turn his back completely. With a heavy sigh, he grabbed his keys and headed out the door. Stay tuned, because this story is about to reach its breaking point. If you're enjoying the twists and turns, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Story Tales for more captivating recaps. Evan found himself driving through the quiet city streets, his mind racing as Leah's message replayed in his head. I think someone's following me. Please, I need your help. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to let Leah deal with her own problems. But another part, the part that still remembered the years they'd spent together, couldn't leave her to fend for herself. Regardless of her betrayal, no one deserved to feel unsafe. When he arrived at Leah's apartment, she was waiting on the curb, her arms wrapped around herself. She looked frazzled, her hair disheveled and her eyes darting nervously toward the shadows. Evan, she said, rushing to his car. Thank you for coming. What's going on? He asked, his voice tense as she climbed into the passenger seat. Leah took a shaky breath. I've been seeing this black car parked near my building all day. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but then it started following me when I went to the store. I'm scared. Evan, I don't know what to do. Evan frowned. He glanced in the rearview mirror but didn't see any suspicious vehicles. Still, her fear seemed genuine, and it set him on edge. Did you call the police? She shook her head. What am I supposed to tell them? That my ex-boyfriend's threatening me because I got involved in his mess? They won't care. Evan sighed, gripping the steering wheel. All right, let's get you somewhere safe for the night. You can stay at a hotel. I'll cover the cost. Leah hesitated. Thank you. But what if he finds me there too? Evan clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of her words. Despite everything, he didn't want to see her hurt. We'll figure this out, he said finally. But first, let's get you out of here. Evan drove Leah to a small, discreet hotel on the edge of town and paid for her room. As they stood in the dimly lit lobby, Leah reached out and touched his arm. Evan, she said softly, her voice breaking. I'm sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve your help after what I did, but thank you. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Stay here tonight. Lock the door and don't open it for anyone. I'll check in with you tomorrow. Leah's eyes filled with tears as she watched him leave. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope, though it was tinged with regret. The next day, Evan met with Carl to discuss Leah's situation. The investigator's expression was grim as Evan relayed the events of the previous night. This is getting messy, Carl said. If Ryan's as connected as Leah claims, she might actually be in danger. And by helping her, you could be putting yourself in his crosshairs too. I'm not scared of Ryan, Evan said firmly. If he's behind this, I want to know. And I want to make sure Leah's safe. Carl nodded. All right, I'll dig deeper into Ryan's background. In the meantime, tell Leah to keep a low profile. That evening, Evan received a call from Leah. Her voice was trembling. Evan, I think someone's been in my apartment. What? He said, his pulse quickening. Did you go back there? I needed to grab a few things, she admitted. But when I walked in, the place felt off. My dresser drawers were open, and some of my clothes were missing. I don't know what to do. Evan's mind raced. If Ryan or someone connected to him was sending a message, they were escalating fast. Go back to the hotel, he said. I'll meet you there. As Evan drove to the hotel, his phone buzzed with a text from Carl. I found something big. Call me ASAP. Evan dialed Carl's number, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. What did you find? Ryan's company officially filed charges against him this morning, Carl said. They've got evidence of embezzlement, and it's bad. If he goes down, he's looking at years in prison. My guess? He's panicking and trying to clean up loose ends. And Leah's one of those loose ends, Evan said, his stomach sinking. Exactly, Carl replied. If she knows anything that could incriminate him, he'll want to keep her quiet. Evan's jaw tightened. Then we need to act fast. When Evan arrived at the hotel, Leah was pacing the room, her anxiety palpable. He filled her in on Carl's findings, and her face turned ashen. What do I do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We go to the police, Evan said firmly. You tell them everything you know about Ryan and his threats. It's the only way to protect yourself. Leah hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. What if they don't believe me? What if Ryan finds out? They'll believe you, Evan said. And if Ryan tries anything, he'll have the law on his back. The next day, Leah and Evan met with a detective at the local precinct. Leah recounted her story, her hands trembling as she described Ryan's threats and the strange occurrences at her apartment. Evan provided Carl's findings, which added weight to her claims. The detective, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Harris, listened intently. We'll open an investigation, she said. But you need to be careful. If Ryan's desperate, he might act recklessly. Leah nodded, her fear evident. Evan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, silently vowing to see this through. As the investigation unfolded, tension continued to build. Leah remained at the hotel, while Evan worked closely with Carl and the police to gather more evidence against Ryan. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Ryan's web of deceit extended far beyond Leah. He had been defrauding not just his company, but also clients and business partners, amassing enemies on all sides. One night, as Evan sat in his living room reviewing documents from Carl, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Hello. You need to stop, a low, menacing voice said. This isn't your fight, Harper. Walk away, or you'll regret it. The line went dead before Evan could respond. A chill ran down his spine, but he refused to be intimidated. If anything, the threat only strengthened his resolve. The climax was rapidly approaching, and Evan knew the stakes couldn't be higher. Ryan's actions had put Leah and now Evan in real danger. But Evan wasn't about to back down. He had spent months rebuilding his life after Leah's betrayal, and now he was determined to ensure that justice was served. Stay tuned, because the final confrontation is just around the corner. If you're hooked on this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Story Tales for more. Evan stared at his phone, the chilling voice still echoing in his mind. Whoever it was, they had made their message clear. Stop digging or face the consequences. But Evan wasn't one to back down, especially not now. Ryan had manipulated and hurt too many people, and Leah's safety, despite their past, was on the line. The next morning, Evan updated Carl on the threatening call. The investigator's expression darkened. They're desperate, Carl said. That means we're getting close. But it also means they might escalate. What's the next step? Evan asked, his resolve unwavering. Carl leaned back in his chair, considering. We need to go public. Get ahead of Ryan's threats by putting the heat on him. If he thinks the walls are closing in, he might slip up. Later that day, Evan met with Leah at the hotel to discuss the plan. She was visibly shaken, her nerves frayed from the mounting pressure. Go public? She asked, her voice trembling. What does that mean? It means exposing Ryan, Evan explained. Letting the media and law enforcement handle the fallout. If we bring his crimes into the light, he won't be able to operate in the shadows. Leah hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. But what if he retaliates? He's already threatened me. What if he comes after you too? I can handle myself, Evan said firmly. What matters is putting an end to this. Leah nodded, though she still seemed unsure. I don't know how I got here, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never meant for any of this to happen. Evan softened, despite himself. What's done is done. Now we deal with it. Over the next few days, Carl worked tirelessly to compile a comprehensive report on Ryan's activities. Evan assisted where he could, providing documentation and ensuring Leah's safety as they prepared to go public. Meanwhile, Detective Harris ramped up her investigation, coordinating with federal authorities to build a case against Ryan. As the pressure mounted, Ryan began to show cracks. Leah received cryptic messages on her phone, each one more desperate than the last. You don't know who you're messing with. This ends now or you'll regret it. Despite the threats, Evan and Leah pressed on. They knew the only way to end this nightmare was to see it through to the bitter end. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Carl called Evan with urgent news. We've got him, Carl said, his voice brimming with excitement. A whistleblower from Ryan's company just came forward. They've handed over records that tie him directly to the embezzlement and several other illegal activities. He's toast. Evan felt a surge of relief. What happens now? The authorities are moving in, Carl replied. But there's one more thing. Ryan knows he's cornered, and he's desperate. Be careful. Evan thanked Carl and hung up, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. But as he turned to leave his office, his phone buzzed again. It was Leah. Evan, she said, her voice barely audible over the sound of rain. He's here. Evan's heart sank. Where are you? At the hotel, Leah whispered. I saw him in the parking lot. He's just sitting in his car, watching me. Stay inside, Evan said, grabbing his keys. I'm on my way. Don't open the door for anyone. He drove through the rain-soaked streets, his mind racing. By the time he arrived at the hotel, the parking lot was empty, but Leah's panic was palpable when he reached her room. He was right there, she said, pacing back and forth. I saw him, Evan. I know it was him. Evan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He's gone now, but we're not taking any chances. You're coming with me. Back at Evan's house, they devised a plan. Leah would stay hidden while the authorities closed in on Ryan. Meanwhile, Carl and Detective Harris would ensure that the whistleblower's evidence was airtight, leaving no room for Ryan to wriggle out. But Ryan wasn't finished yet. The next morning, Evan woke to find a rock thrown through his window. Attached was a note that read, "Back off. Last warning." Evan showed the note to Detective Harris, who assured him that they were closing in on Ryan. He's lashing out because he knows it's over, she said. We'll have him in custody soon. The climax came 2 days later. Evan was at home when his phone buzzed with a call from Carl. They got him, Carl said, his voice triumphant. Ryan's been arrested. They caught him trying to leave town with a suitcase full of cash. Relief flooded through Evan. After months of turmoil, the nightmare was finally coming to an end. In the aftermath, Leah testified against Ryan, providing crucial information that helped seal his fate. Though she was far from blameless, her cooperation earned her leniency in the eyes of the law. As for Evan, he began to rebuild his life with a newfound sense of purpose. He had faced betrayal, danger, and heartbreak, but he had come out stronger on the other side. Stay tuned for the final resolution of this incredible story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Story Tales for more gripping recaps. The news of Ryan's arrest brought a brief sense of relief, but Evan knew the fallout was far from over. Ryan may have been out of the picture for now, but the damage he had caused left ripples that would take time to settle. For Leah, the reality of her choices was finally sinking in. She spent hours at the police station providing testimony, recounting every detail of her involvement with Ryan. It was a grueling process, one that left her emotionally drained and riddled with guilt. When she returned to Evan's house that evening, she looked like a shadow of her former self. "Thank you," she said quietly as she sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, "for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you." Evan nodded, though his expression remained guarded. "You're lucky things didn't end worse. Ryan could have hurt you or worse." Leah's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I can't believe I let it get this far. I thought I was in control, but he was manipulating me the whole time." Evan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Why did you do it, Leah? Was it really worth losing everything?" She looked down, her shoulders slumping under the weight of her regret. "I don't know," she admitted. "At the time, I thought I was unhappy. I thought Ryan was offering me something I was missing. But now I realize I was just running from my own problems." Her honesty surprised Evan, but it didn't erase the pain she had caused. "Running from your problems doesn't make them go away," he said. "It just creates new ones." As the days turned into weeks, Leah began the slow process of rebuilding her life. She moved out of the hotel and into a small apartment provided by a local women's support organization. She found a part-time job and started attending therapy, determined to confront the choices that had led her down such a destructive path. Evan, meanwhile, focused on moving forward. He threw himself into work, taking on new projects and expanding his network. He also reconnected with old friends, rediscovering the joy of companionship without the weight of betrayal hanging over him. But the shadows of the past lingered, and Evan knew he couldn't fully move on until he found closure. That closure came unexpectedly one afternoon when he received a letter in the mail. It was from Leah, written in her neat, careful handwriting. He hesitated before opening it, unsure if he was ready to hear what she had to say. "Evan, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. But I wanted to thank you for helping me when you didn't have to, for being stronger than I ever was, and for showing me what true integrity looks like. I've made so many mistakes, but the biggest was betraying the one person who truly cared about me. I'm trying to change. I know it won't happen overnight, but I'm determined to become someone I can be proud of. Someone who would make you proud, even if you never see it. Thank you for being my wake-up call, even if it came at the cost of our relationship. I wish you nothing but happiness and peace. Leah." Evan sat with the letter for a long time, his emotions a complex mix of sadness, relief, and acceptance. Leah's words didn't erase the pain she had caused, but they gave him something he hadn't realized he needed: a sense of finality. The final confrontation with Ryan came during his trial. Evan attended the proceedings at Detective Harris's request, his presence a reminder of the lives Ryan had tried to destroy. Leah also testified, her voice trembling but steady as she recounted her experiences. The courtroom was tense as the evidence was presented. Ryan's embezzlement, his threats, and his manipulations were laid bare for everyone to see. His once confident demeanor crumbled under the weight of the accusations, and when the guilty verdict was announced, a collective sigh of relief swept through the room. As Ryan was led away in handcuffs, Evan felt a sense of justice that had eluded him for so long. The man who had caused so much pain was finally being held accountable, and with that, a chapter of Evan's life came to a close. Months later, Evan stood in his newly renovated home, admiring the fresh paint and modern decor. The house no longer felt like a prison of memories but a symbol of his resilience and growth. Max trotted over, tail wagging, and Evan knelt to scratch behind his ears. "What do you think, boy? Not bad. Huh." The dog barked in agreement, and Evan smiled. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt a sense of peace. One evening, Clara stopped by with a bottle of wine to celebrate the completion of Evan's latest project. As they sat on the patio watching the sunset, she raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said, clinking her glass against his. Evan nodded, his smile genuine. "To new beginnings." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Evan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The pain of the past would always be a part of him, but it no longer defined him. He was ready to embrace the future one step at a time. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Story Tales for more captivating recaps. Until next time, take care and stay inspired. The weeks following Ryan's conviction felt like the calm after a long and tumultuous storm. For the first time in months, Evan woke up without the weight of betrayal and uncertainty pressing on his chest. The chaos that had upended his life was finally behind him, and he was determined to rebuild stronger than ever. Leah's testimony during Ryan's trial had been a turning point, not just in the case, but in her own journey of redemption. Though the court recognized her as a victim of Ryan's manipulations, Leah couldn't ignore the choices that had led her there. She began attending counseling regularly, working through the tangled emotions that had driven her to betray the man who once meant everything to her. She also reached out to Evan again, this time through an official mediator. Leah wanted to meet one last time, not to beg for reconciliation but to offer an apology face-to-face. After much consideration, Evan agreed. They met at a quiet park on a cool autumn morning. The leaves had turned shades of red and gold, and the air was crisp with the promise of change. Leah was already sitting on a bench when Evan arrived, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Thank you for coming," she said softly as he sat down beside her. Evan nodded, his expression neutral. "You said you had something to say." Leah took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "I know I can never undo what I did. I hurt you in ways I'll never forgive myself for. But I wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry. Not just for the affair, but for all the lies and pain I caused. You didn't deserve any of it." Evan studied her for a moment, his gaze unreadable. "I appreciate the apology," he said finally. "But forgiveness, that's not something I can give you right now." Leah nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I understand. I just needed you to know that I'm trying to change. Not for anyone else, but for myself." Evan stood, his tone firm but not unkind. "I hope you do. Take care of yourself, Leah." As he walked away, Leah watched him go, knowing it was the last time she would see him. She felt a bittersweet sense of closure, a realization that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them move on. Back at home, Evan felt lighter. The meeting with Leah had been emotionally draining, but it had also been necessary. For months, her betrayal had defined his pain, but now he saw it for what it was. A chapter in his life, not the whole story. Evan's career flourished in the months following Ryan's downfall. His company landed several high-profile projects, and his reputation as a trustworthy and innovative leader grew. Clara, his loyal assistant and now a close friend, often joked that Evan was a phoenix rising from the ashes. "You're living proof that life doesn't end when things fall apart," Clara said one afternoon as they reviewed a new proposal. Evan chuckled. "I guess so, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process." One of the most profound changes in Evan's life came from within. He began taking better care of himself, both physically and emotionally. He picked up new hobbies, like hiking and photography, and even started volunteering at a local animal shelter. Spending time with the dogs, including Max, who had been his constant companion through it all, reminded him of the simple joys in life. Max had grown into more than just a pet. He was a symbol of resilience, The once scrawny rescue dog was now healthy, happy, and always by Evan's side. As the holidays approached, Evan hosted a small gathering at his newly renovated home. For the first time in years, his space felt warm and inviting, filled with laughter and the company of friends who had stood by him through thick and thin. Clara raised a toast during the evening, her smile bright. To new beginnings, and to Evan, proof that even the hardest times can lead to something beautiful. Evan clinked glasses with her and the others, a genuine smile on his face. For the first time in what felt like forever, he believed those words. As for Leah, she continued her journey of self-improvement. Though she and Evan had no contact after their meeting in the park, she often thought of him and the lessons she had learned from their time together. She had made peace with the fact that forgiveness might never come, but she was determined to live a life that honored the second chance she'd been given. Evan's story is a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of boundaries, and the strength it takes to rebuild after betrayal. Though the scars of the past remain, they no longer define him. Instead, they serve as a reminder of how far he's come. As the snow began to fall on a crisp winter evening, Evan stood by the window of his home, a cup of coffee in hand and Max curled up at his feet. The world outside was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, Evan felt the same. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Story Tales for more inspiring and thought-provoking recaps. Until next time, take care and remember, every ending is a chance for a new beginning.